Oversight and Government Reform will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. I want to thank Director Comey for being here and doing so on short notice. I have the greatest admiration for the FBI. My grandfather was a career FBI agent. I tell you, I'm here because we're mystified and confused by the fact pattern that you laid out and the conclusions that you reached. It seems that there are two standards, and there's no consequence for these types of activities and dealing in a careless way with classified information. It seems to a lot of us that the average Joe, the average American, that if they had done what you laid out in your statement, that they'd be in handcuffs, and they might be on their way to jail, and they probably should. And I think there is a legitimate concern that there is a double standard. If your name isn't Clinton, or you're not part of the powerful elite, that Lady Justice will act differently. It's a concern that Lady Justice will take off that blindfold and come to a different conclusion. Hillary Clinton created this mess. It wasn't Republicans, it wasn't anybody else. She made a very conscious decision. On the very day that she started her Senate confirmation, she set up and got a domain name and set up a system to avoid and bypass the safety, security, and the protocol of the State Department. Classified information is classified for a reason. It's classified because if it were to get out into the public, there are nefarious actors, nation states, others, that want to do harm to this country. And there are people who put their lives on the line, protecting and serving our country. And when those communications are not secure, it puts their lives in jeopardy. This classified information is entrusted to very few, but there is such a duty and an obligation to protect that, to fall on your sword to protect that. And yet there doesn't seem to be any consequence. You know, I was talking to Trey Gowdy, and he made a really good point with us yesterday. Mr. Gowdy said, you know, in your statement, Mr. Director, you mentioned that there was no precedent for this. But we believe that you have set a precedent, and it's a dangerous one. The precedent is if you sloppily deal with classified information, if you're cavalier about it, and it wasn't just an innocent mistake, this went on for years, that there's going to be no consequence. We're a different nation in the United States of America. We are self-critical. Most nations would never do this. But we do it in the spirit of making ourselves better. There'll be all kinds of accusations about political this and political that. I have defended your integrity every step of the way. You are the definitive voice. I stand by that. But I am mystified, and I am confused, because you listen to your fact pattern and come to the conclusion that there is no consequence. I don't know how to explain that. We'll have constituents ask us. They'll get mad. They'll pound it. You know, they're frustrated. They've seen this happen time and time again. I don't know how to explain it. And I hope that through this hearing, we can stick to the facts and understand this, because there does seem to be two standards. There does seem to be no consequence. And I want to understand that. And I want to be able to explain it to the person that's sitting at home. And that's why we're here. And so I yield back. Now I recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings. Thank you, Director. I'm going to recognize myself here. Physically, where were Hillary Clinton's servers?
The operational server was in the basement of her home in New York. The reason I'm answering it that way is sometimes after they were decommissioned, they were moved to other facilities, storage facilities, but the live device was always in the basement.
Was that an authorized or unauthorized location?
It was an unauthorized location for the transmitting of classified information.
Is it reasonable or unreasonable to expect Hillary Clinton would receive and send classified information?
As Secretary of State, reasonable that the Secretary of State would encounter classified information in the course of the Secretary's work.
Via email?
Sure, depending upon the nature of the system. To communicate classified information would have to be a classified rated email system.
But you did find more than 100 emails that were classified that had gone through that server, correct?
Right, through an unclassified server, correct.
Yes. So Hillary Clinton did come to possess documents and materials containing classified information via email on these unsecured servers, correct?
That is correct.
Did Hillary Clinton lie?
To the FBI? We have no basis to conclude she lied to the FBI.
Did she lie to the public?
That's a question I'm not qualified to answer. I can speak about what she said to the FBI.
Did Hillary Clinton lie under oath?
Not to the FBI, not in a case we're working.
Did you review the documents where Congressman Jim Jordan asked her specifically, and she said, quote, "There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received," end quote?
I don't remember reviewing that particular testimony. I'm aware of that being said, though.
Did the FBI investigate her statements under oath on this topic?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think there's been a referral from Congress.
Do you need a referral from Congress to investigate her statements under oath?
Sure do.
You'll have one. You'll have one in the next few hours. Did Hillary Clinton break the law?
In connection with her use of the email server, my judgment is that she did not.
Did you just not able to prosecute it, or did Hillary Clinton break the law?
Well, I don't want to give an overly lawyerly answer. The question I always look at is there evidence that would establish beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody engaged in conduct that violated a criminal statute? And my judgment here is there is not.
The FBI does background checks. If Hillary Clinton applied for the job at the FBI, would the FBI give Hillary Clinton a security clearance?
I don't want to answer a hypothetical. The FBI has a robust process in which we adjudicate the suitability of people for employment in the Bureau.
Given the fact pattern you laid out less than 48 hours ago, would a person who had dealt with classified information like that, would that person be granted a security clearance at the FBI?
It would be a very important consideration in a suitability determination.
You're kind of making my point, Director. The point being, because I injected the word Hillary Clinton, you gave me a different answer. But if I came up to you and said that this person was extremely careless with classified information, the exposure to hostile actors, had used, despite warnings, created unnecessary burdens and exposure. If they said that they had one device and you found out that they had multiple devices, if there had been email chains with somebody like Jake Sullivan asking for classification changes, you're telling me that the FBI would grant a security clearance to that person?
I hope I'm giving a consistent answer. I'm not saying what the answer would be. I'm saying that would be an important consideration in a suitability determination for anybody.
And it's just, personally, I just think that sounds like a bit of a political answer, because I can't imagine that the FBI would grant a security clearance to somebody with that fact pattern. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I just say what I said before. Again, it's very hard to answer in the hypothetical. I'll repeat it. It would be a very important consideration in a suitability determination.
Did Hillary Clinton do anything wrong?
And what do you mean by wrong?
I think it's self-evident.
Well, I'm a lawyer, I'm an investigator, and I hope a normal human being.
Do you really believe there should be no consequence for Hillary Clinton and how she dealt with this?
Well, I didn't say, I hope folks remember what I said on Tuesday. I didn't say there's no consequence for someone who violates the rules regarding the handling of classified information, there are often very severe consequences in the FBI involving their employment, involving their pay, involving their clearances. That's what I said on Tuesday, and I hope folks walk away understanding that just because someone's not prosecuted for mishandling classified information, that doesn't mean if you work in the FBI, there aren't consequences for it.
So if Hillary Clinton, or if anybody, had worked at the FBI under this fact pattern, what would you do to that person?
There would be a security review and an adjudication of their suitability, and a range of discipline could be imposed from termination to reprimand, and in between suspensions, loss of clearance. So you could be walked out, or you could, depending on the nature of the facts, you could be reprimanded. But there is a robust process to handle that.
I've gone past my time. I yield back. Now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders now reinforcing President Trump's call for an investigation into former President Obama and his administration. So where does it go now? House Intelligence Committee member Trey Gowdy's with me. He says it's already happening. Sir, good morning to you. So our viewers know you met with the FBI director last week, correct?
Yes, sir. Thursday, House Intel behind closed doors for several hours, and he stayed later than he was designed to stay to answer more of our questions.
Wow. How much of that can you share with us and our audience now, then?
Exactly what I shared, that he came, that he answered our questions, and that he stayed a good long while. But
so
there's a reason we do it behind closed doors.
I get it. There was no knowledge of what the president tweeted on Saturday morning about the Obama team surveilling Trump Tower.
First I heard it was Saturday morning.
And what did you think when you heard that, sir?
Bill, it's really hard to cross-examine tweets. I need witnesses. I need documents. There are only two ways U.S. citizens' electronic communications can be intercepted. One's Title III, which is a criminal inquiry. The other is FISA, which is an intelligence inquiry. There is no other way for it lawfully to be done. The good news about both of those, Bill, is there's a paper trail. There's an application, there are warrants, all of which can be reviewed. And right now, the executive branch is controlled not by the Obama administration, but by the Trump administration. So whatever information is out there, and there would be a paper trail, is now controlled by the executive branch run by Mr. Trump.
We've got reaction on all this. Adam Schiff, first up, a Democrat on that committee. You know, you work with him well. He called the accusation on Sunday destructive. The other word he used was baseless. What does he know?
He doesn't know any more than I know, and I'm sure Adam used to be a federal prosecutor. I'm sure what he meant to say was we need to interview all of the witnesses, we need to access all of the documents, and we're going to wait to make any conclusions until we have done both of those things. I'm sure that's what he meant to say.
He did not say that, as you know.
No, he did not say that.
Bob Woodward said this on Fox News Sunday about the House's ability to investigate. Watch.
Congress also is not very well equipped to do this. They've had some flops in recent investigations. So the quality of information, of evidence we're liable to get is going to be weak. I have to recall Watergate went on for 2 years and 2 months to get some sort of closure and clarity.
Well, we're not going that far, but what do you think about his comment about the amount of information, the quality of evidence, et cetera?
I think Congress is much better equipped to do investigations than journalists are. We can't rely on anonymous sources. We can't rely on leaked information, classified information, which in and of itself is a crime. So with all due respect to the reporters, I can't cross-examine anonymous sources. You can't even directly examine them. It's a lot easier to write a news piece than it is to conduct an investigation. What Congress needs is access to the witnesses, access to the documents, and to understand we don't run parallel criminal investigations. We have a job to do, but it is not to investigate crime.
Have you seen evidence that the Obama team did surveillance at Trump Tower?
No, sir.
Have you seen evidence that the Trump team colluded with the Russians during the election last year?
No, sir, and reports to the contrary have been described as demonstrably false to me by people who would know.
Jason Chaffetz, your colleague, said last hour the Obama team is notorious for this, suggesting notorious for spying. What can you add to that?
Nothing. I don't view it as the Obama team. I don't think the FBI is the Obama team, and I don't think the men and women who are career prosecutors at DOJ belong to any team other than a blindfolded woman holding a set of scales. We have certain tools that this country needs to keep us safe. And it is great and wise and prudent and legal for those tools to be used lawfully and appropriately. If they're not used lawfully and appropriately, there is a paper trail, and we will be able to find it out. The Obama team is no longer in charge. So any information that the current Department of Justice has that suggests the previous Department of Justice acted inappropriately, they are welcome to release it.
Sir, thank you for your time. Back home in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
More to come. Trey Gowdy, thank you.
Well, more now on the developing story we've been telling about today in Washington. President Trump's wiretap accusations against his predecessor, President Obama. Well, that has left a lot of the politicians there reeling. Lawmakers, including members from the president's own party, saying they were blindsided.
I've never seen anything about that anywhere before. But again, the president put that out there, and now the White House will have to answer as to exactly what he was referring to.
President Obama has flatly denied that he has done this. And either way, Chuck, the president's in trouble. If he falsely spread this kind of misinformation, that is so wrong. It's beneath the dignity of the presidency.
And this comes as a showdown apparently is brewing between the president and the FBI director. The New York Times reported that James Comey is demanding this weekend that the Department of Justice refute the president's charge it was wiretapped as not true, saying the highly charged claim is false and must be corrected. So, what happens next? Betsy Woodruff, a political reporter at the Daily Beast. Betsy, what does it mean if, as we go into Monday morning, the FBI director is going up against the president on his word, on his truthfulness? Is it the Bureau versus the Office of the President of the United States?
That's kind of the way that this has been framed. Yes, the reality is that the allegations that the president made yesterday are really direct criticism of the FBI. And it's curious because the president spent his entire campaign positioning himself as an advocate for law enforcement, as a defender of federal law enforcement agents. But these allegations, these statements and tweets that he made yesterday really counter that. They indicate that he believes the FBI was engaged in law breaking, which is pretty astounding. So it certainly makes sense that the FBI director, James Comey, would want the president to correct the record. These kind of statements can be deeply demoralizing to law enforcement officers, and the fact that the president, who has presented himself as one of their top allies, is the one lobbying a criticism like this is quite extraordinary.
Well, you mentioned accusations of law breaking. It may not be accusations of law breaking. There could have been a FISA order, with the Intelligence Security Act. I mean, it could have been a warrant. It has to be signed by the judge, potentially on that server that has been reported on at Trump Tower, involved allegedly with 2 Russian banks.
The place where the major legal issues would come up would be if somebody in the FBI illegally gave information to the White House or took directions from the White House in a way that circumvented the traditional legal process. The question is, was the White House involved in the FBI's potential request for a potential FISA warrant? And at this point, that's key to the allegations the president made on Twitter yesterday, and I think that's a major part of the reason that Comey wants to see him correct the record. Of course, as you stated, the way that the FBI gets these FISA warrants is legal. There's a complex, traditional, typical legal process that you go through if you want to surveil a U.S. person. The White House is not part of that process. It's not how the process works. So the president alleging that the former president entered himself into that process, worked with the FBI, that the FBI sort of caved to pressure from the White House when it was going through those legal steps, is a pretty astounding allegation.
Well, I mean, what if there's a legitimate investigation? But as of what we know now from James Comey, as reported in the New York Times, at this moment, there was no wiretapping at all. And Comey has asked the DOJ to come out and counter what the president said in those tweets. But the Department of Justice right now is silent. Do you expect them to say anything? And why won't the FBI director himself go public? He's done that before.
Well, it's possible he still could, right? This news is developing as we discuss it. That said, I would be a bit surprised if the DOJ went public on this, just because it would be them criticizing their boss, the president. The showdown would be extraordinary within the executive branch. Of course, the important context here is that many of the DOJ's top roles haven't even been filled out yet. On Tuesday, Rod Rosenstein, who's the president's nominee to be the Deputy Attorney General, has his hearing on Capitol Hill. He, of course, is the person who would make decisions on campaign-related investigations at the Department of Justice. Since Attorney General Sessions has recused himself, Rosenstein is heading into what's likely to be a very dramatic and high-stakes confirmation process. Before the president sent those tweets, it would have been potentially boring, but now it's really important.
And you know he's going to be asked about this. Meanwhile, Leon Panetta, an old Washington hand, former chief of staff in the Democratic White House, President Clinton, as well as CIA director, he says this is not going away. Here's what he said earlier today.
You know, the best advice I could give the president and this administration is to get ahead of this. Don't get behind it. Get ahead of it. Present the facts as they know it, and commit themselves to cooperating with the investigations that are going on.
Do you think this White House will do that?
It's a good question. Right now, it seems like the White House press office has sort of taken a big step back. They're punting to Capitol Hill, encouraging Hill Republicans, Hill oversight workers to do the investigation and try to find evidence that could potentially be made public. Of course, these are all classified issues, so it's not something that is easy for the White House to talk about, and that's why the president's tweets were so unusual in the first place, because he was making allegations about FISA warrants, FISA courts, that are typically classified and not something that anybody, any regular people in the public know about. Of course, that's been a source of major criticism for the FISA courts in the past.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens when the doors open for business in the morning. The Department of Justice, if they will be commenting and if they will acquiesce to what the director of the FBI wants on the president's tweets. Betsy Woodworth, thank you for joining us.
Sure thing.
So Willie and I at the helm in New York and Washington this morning. We have a lot to get to, including those tax returns, 2 pages of Donald Trump's tax returns that were revealed by MSNBC late last night. The question this morning, though, is did Donald Trump perhaps release them in his own special way, which we'll get to that question as well. But first, patience is wearing thin with the director of the FBI in the U.S. Senate. Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse tells Politico that Director James Comey has indicated privately to senators that he may provide a clearer explanation of the existence of a Russia-related FBI investigation ahead of today's Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on meddling in the 2016 election. White House said the FBI director made the suggestion during a private sit-down between the two men and Republican Subcommittee Chairman Senator Lindsey Graham on March 2nd. The same day, Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself from any potential investigations involving Russia. On our show yesterday, Senator Whitehouse told us it's important for Comey to answer the question publicly because the committee can't have an FBI director insist they steer clear of a criminal investigation while not confirming that there even is a criminal investigation. Senator Whitehouse told us that he expects Comey to disclose any warrant applications that the FBI might have made for wiretaps at Trump Tower or of Trump associates in response to a letter that White House and Republican Lindsey Graham sent last week. And Lindsey Graham is now forcing the issue.
You need to come to that hearing because I'm going to make an announcement about the letter and let the FBI know they're about to screw up big time if they keep running to the Intel Committee and not answer that letter. And sort of the theme of what I'm going to say is that I believe in regular order, let each committee do its thing. We have jurisdiction over the FBI. I like Director Comey a lot, but we wrote him a letter. They don't honor this request and give us an answer, then I would say that we need a joint select committee because the regular order is not working.
And more news coming on Morning Joe today. Lindsey Graham will be our guest. Michael Steele, what's he doing?
Hey, he's throwing down. He's drawing a very bright line here and saying, look, you either put up or shut up, because they recognize that for the Republicans, this is going to be a particularly sticky situation. So they want to get it behind them as quickly as possible. The idea that the former president of the United States was involved in a federal criminal action is problematic at best, but you better have the evidence to back it up. And so without that evidence, Lindsey Graham, let's move away. If you don't have it, let's move on.
So Lindsey Graham, Mark Halperin is forcing the issue with the White House.
It's interesting.
With
a lot of
times
members of Congress respond to political pressure from their constituents or from talk radio, whatever. In this case, most of the Republicans who are interested in investigating seem to be doing it on the merits. They actually want to get to the bottom of the facts, and that's for the White House kind of a dangerous position to be in, because you've got members of Congress who can't be really swayed because they've got the bit in their mouth. They want to know what happened because they're concerned about Russian influence on the American election on the merits.
David Ignatius, I'm sure our leaders around the world are watching this as well. What are the key questions here, especially for the president himself?
The key question is really what kind of investigation, if any, was being undertaken by the FBI into Russian activities in the U.S. that might have touched Trump Tower.
Right.
The paradox of President Trump accusing President Obama, the Obama administration, of tapping his wires is that now the question's forced. So now we're going to find out whether there was an investigation that authorized under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, authorized under some other legal means, into evidence that concerned the FBI at that time. That's a big step forward. Then we are into the terrain of really getting down and understanding what happened.
So there's Lindsey Graham, who's going to be on the show this morning. He's forcing the issue. And Willie Geist. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, I mean, another Republican stepping into the fray here now on this question of Russia. In an unexpected move, Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley said he will block the confirmation of President Trump's Deputy Attorney General pick until he gets Russia-related answers from the Justice Department. The powerful Iowa Republican said yesterday he will not schedule the committee's vote on Rod Rosenstein's nomination until FBI Director Comey responds to his written request from last month, when he and ranking Democrat Dianne Feinstein asked for a briefing on Russia specifically related to the abrupt resignation of Michael Flynn as White House National Security Advisor. Meanwhile, Senate Intel Committee Chairman Richard Burr said he is satisfied with what he's heard on Trump-related wiretaps and Russia so far, saying he didn't feel he had to ask for related documents because, quote, we have had sufficient conversations and gotten answers that we find to be satisfactory from the appropriate folks. David Ignatius, what's the implication of Chuck Grassley as well stepping forward? Now you have prominent Republicans now going out publicly in the media, speaking their minds and saying, we want to know exactly what's going on here, and we won't move forward past things you want until we get our answers.
Willie, I just think it shows that the movement to demand a full congressional investigation is broadening. Chuck Grassley is not at the center of this investigation, never has been. So if he's deciding that politically it's important for him to be part of the group calling for complete disclosure, that's important. This is no longer John McCain and Lindsey Graham, longtime critics of Donald Trump. Right. It's broadening to more of the party. Other Republican members of the Senate Intelligence Committee tell me the same thing. They're serious about getting to the bottom of this.
You know, we'll have a lot of questions for Lindsey Graham when he comes on this morning. Also, ranking member of the Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, will be our guest. So we have a lot more that could develop in the next few hours right here on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.